In 24 February 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine, something that shocked the world. While Russia was preparing its troops from the end of the last year, nobody actually thought Russia is going to actually invade. But why did Russia do something that, if went wrong, can screw the whole country? And even if they succeeded, the damage has already been done. I mean, just look to the Russian ruble and their economy. So in this video, I'm going to try and answer that. So to understand what happened, we should understand both Russia's and Ukraine's history and geography. So in the 9th century, some Slavic tribes founded the Kievan Rus kingdom. This kingdom played an important role in the development of both Russia and Ukraine. But in the 13th century, the Mongols invaded under the leadership of Batu Khan and completely destroyed the kingdom. After that, a new Slavic kingdom was founded in the city of Moscow, which will later become Russia. And here, let's talk about Russia's geography. So, Moscow, the heart of Russia, is located in the North European plain, which make it very easy to invade. That's why most of Russia's history is basically them trying to expand as much as possible, so they can protect their weak center. Today, to invade Russia, you have to either invade it from the east, from Siberia, which is pretty much impossible, or from the west, the easy way. And they got invaded from there a lot in their history. The Swedes tried, the Poles tried, the French tried under Napoleon, the German tried in both worlds, and that's why Russia also tried to create a buffer zone in Eastern Europe between its borders and the other great powers to be safe from them. This made Russia get into conflict with a lot of other powers in history, and the most important one was the NATO Pact, an alliance made by the US and Western Europe to fight back against the USSR and communism. And that's why, in 1955, the USSR made the Warsaw Pact to be safe from the NATO. But in 1999, the USSR collapsed, and Russia was looking to the NATO, adding more post-Soviet countries to the alliance, and getting closer to the Russian border. And by 2004, all the countries who was in the Warsaw Pact has joined the NATO and the EU, and with it, the NATO reached the Russian border for the first time. At the same time, Putin, the guy who was very mad at the collapse of the USSR, rose to power, and the one goal he had was to restore Russia as a superpower. But unfortunately for Ukraine, Russia was dependent on them, or more particularly, was dependent on the Crimean Peninsula for trading, and especially exporting oil and gas to Europe. Since 25% of the European gas came from Russia, because Russian geography have another problem, and it's that Russia doesn't have a good port. Because Russia's beaches either froze for half of the year, or not deep enough for big ships, and without that, Russia will be isolated from the rest of the world. And even the beaches that can be used for that are in places that can be easily blocked by the NATO. And that left them with one solution: Crimea in Ukraine. And since Ukraine was a part of the USSR, it didn't really matter. But after the collapse of the USSR, Ukraine became an independent country. But even after that, the Ukrainian government was just a pro-Russian puppet. But when that government collapsed in 2014, and the new government started trying to join the NATO and the EU, Russia invaded Crimea, because for Russia, losing Crimea is an existential threat. And after that, Russia started supporting a separatist in eastern Ukraine to keep it unstable. Because for Russia, seeing Ukraine, Belarus or Georgia, another country that Russia invaded by the way in the side of the West, is something that they can never accept. But for Eastern European countries like Ukraine, Russian policy always makes them worried about either getting invaded or become puppets. So joining the NATO seems like the best option. And Ukraine have a point. I mean, just look to Kazakhstan or Belarus. And so this is the story. I hope you now have a better understanding. Sorry if I, skipped some things. I tried to oversimplify the story and not make it very complicated. And just talk about the history of the two countries and the reasons behind the current invasion. So this is all for today. I am Wonder of you, and I'll see you again in the next video.
Le train de 10h03 ne partira pas sans toi. C'est la dernière fois que je te dis ça. Le train de 10h03 ne partira pas sans toi. C'est tant mieux pour moi et tant pis pour toi. Le train de 10h03 ne partira pas sans toi. C'est la dernière fois que je te dis ça. La 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 la.